Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my Path to Recovery podcast. Today, we're going to be listening to an episode from another podcast of mine called My Awakening, Bear's Journey Back to God. That particular podcast digs a little bit deeper into what it takes to bring in a higher power into our lives and how the journey may look based on my expertise and my experiences, not only as a former alcoholic, but as an addict of many different aspects of life and as a spiritual seeker searching for God my entire life. So journey with me as we continue to heal our way through the path to recovery. Hey everybody, welcome back to My Awakening podcast, episode 8 today. The title is going to be What's Stopping Me from the Next Level? I don't have to look very far. It's always me that chooses to limit me. Before we jump in, please like, subscribe, favorite or follow this podcast, and please share it with someone you know that could possibly benefit from it. So here we go. As far as I can remember, I thought everything around me kind of created my issues. I never accepted responsibility for my own actions, but I certainly pumped my chest when something good came around. It's a super typical response by most humans to kind of deflect our problems away from ourselves and to almost always blame others for our misfortunes or those mistakes. It's called denial. But what is denial? Is it the river in Egypt? No. Actually, it's a mask that we kind of use to protect ourselves from taking responsibility for our own actions. It's a human trait that hides our pain and conceals our feelings of lacking. The more we deny our place in any situation, the further we get from God, because our divine self is nothing but love and is never lacking anything. So stepping up and taking responsibility requires us to remove our fears that will either be made fun of or thought lesser of by our peers. And that's something we simply cannot have as humans, or so we think. It takes hard work to remove those fears, as with any fear, but it becomes a critical piece of the healing process for our hard times. Not putting such value on what other people think of us in this day and age of social stimulus is a tough challenge to be taking on, especially when you've been told over and over again that we're worthless, or that our opinions don't matter, or that we're garbage, or we might be a terrible person, or even a terrible parent. But it's such a key piece in our healing, and it's super important that we start believing that we have value. At the very least, you've got to know that God values you as its child and as a divine being, and that is something no human can ever take away from us, ever. Now, I have other podcasts that go in depth on dealing with fears. They're called the Path to Recovery and Cognitive Awareness podcast, so we don't need to dig into these fears right now. Now, back to our original topic, what is the next level? So, the next level for anyone is the same. It's the next step to healing, or the next step into improving our behaviors, or it's the next step in a recovery program, or in coping and teaching our children, or the next step at work, or at home. Maybe it's our next step in our eating issues, TV addictions, social media addictions, and so on. Simply put, it's just progress. It's the next step to some sort of improvement to our lives. It doesn't have to be leaps and bounds, though some people are fortunate enough to receive it that way. Everything in life has a starting point, and every step is exactly that, a step. Not a jump, not a leap, or a dash, it's a step. Unfortunately, in the middle of our struggles, our disasters and those disappointments and those hard times, we tend to want a quick fix to escape from our struggles. We seem to treat everything in life as if it's impossible to heal from, and that it needs to heal immediately, not 6 months down the road or 10 years. We look for an escape rather than a healing. An escape allows us to place blame on something outside of us instead of taking on the dreaded responsibility that I mentioned earlier. When we take on the responsibility, we start our true healing process. Now, I used to use a phrase a long time ago that, I just want it to end, or I just want it to be over. I'd search for the easy way out or that quick fix. I had to have some serious life-altering changes take place for me to finally understand that it takes one step at a time, and patience was a virtue of my healing. So why do we wait to take the next step to the next level? As with every accomplishment in our human life, we're the ones that get in our own way from taking that next step. That's a self-created fear-based reaction to the challenges ahead of us. Psychologists, psychotherapists, monks, spiritual teachers, even our neighbors can tell us this. But we just simply don't want to hear the fact that it's all within us. Somewhere deep within us is this fear of the challenges ahead. We're not sure what's coming, if it's going to be easy or hard, if we can or can't, if it'll hurt us mentally, emotionally, or physically. And the list goes on. That's why they call it having a leap of faith. It takes a leap of faith in ourselves to take on the challenges for ourselves. Let me try to make this a little clearer. Every challenge that we have in our lives or that we assist with is a challenge for us, even if we're handling a challenge for someone else, like a child or a coworker, a best friend, or even a family member. It's still a challenge for us because we're finding out if we can help someone or if we can't. For me, my next level means getting closer to God than I already am. So what is it in me that's stopping me from taking that next step, reaching that next level? I suppose it would be best to tell you where I believe I am, and then maybe see where I want to be. And then we can see more clearly what it is within me that's stopping me from attaining that goal. So let's take a look at where I believe I am today. This may not be really easy for me, but it's okay. I actually have to open myself to an insane level of vulnerability here as I share with you some of this deep concept and this deep part of me. There's a chance you're going to be hearing things out of me for the first time, and it's very possible I'm going to be expressing things for the very first time as well. So let's see how this goes. So where am I today? Well, simply enough, I've never been happier with me than I am now. There's never been a time in my life where I was absolutely knowing that who I am is the happiest I've ever been. I'm not saying that there haven't been happier moments in my life, like the birth of my 2 sons, but from straight up being me, I've never been happier with me. All right, let's try to dig a little deeper. I've never been so in touch with my connection with God than I am now. The last 5 years have taken me from being a happy man living in Sedona and hiking Sedona all the time to being the happiest man I've ever been while living in Sedona and hiking Sedona all the time. Yet here I am recovering from a torn meniscus after being hit by a car, and I haven't hiked in almost 4 months. How's that possible? How can I be the happiest I've ever been if I haven't hiked for 4 months? Well, 5 or 10 years ago, this might have actually crushed me. Actually, it probably would have crushed me. To not hike like I do, when I do, would have seemed like too big of a hurdle to overcome, and I could see myself then taking drastic measures to let it all go. So here I am, sitting in my chair, recording this podcast with a smile on my face, watching the sun come up over Sedona and not being in it, but being in it. And I'm unquestionably okay with it. Not that I want my rehabilitation to go any longer, because I'm really aching to get back on the rocks, and I'm disappointed in the length it's taken to be where I am. But I'm okay with the fact that I can't do anything about it beyond my rehabilitation. I can only go so fast to recover. I accept the things I can't control, and in doing so, it kind of allows me to move forward and to heal, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I heal one step at a time. Also, you have to understand, I was hit by a car while I was standing, not while I was driving, and my lower back kind of snapped, and I thought at that moment that I was going to be paralyzed and maybe never walk again, let alone hike. Things could have been way worse than they are, so I'm actually very grateful for the way it ended up, rather than how it could have ended up. Now, getting to that acceptance level has taken me a lifetime. It's not something I just read in a book and decided, woohoo, I was there. It required effort and a lot of dedication. More importantly, it required that I connect with a higher power to assist me, since it was my current human brain that created all the mess and dysfunction happening in my life. So I had to dig deep. I chose to reconnect with God. I mean, there isn't any higher a power than that, so why settle for anything less than God? I'd been healing from my life for over 20 years. I stopped drinking, I stopped putting myself in stressful situations as much as I could. I retrained my brain for healthier results, which meant I had to actually spend 24 weeks away from all the human things in life that seemed to matter the most at the time. Like my kids, my family, my friends, my job, all of it. I had to remove myself from all of it in order to retrain my brain. But even after all of that, I wasn't feeling like I was healed. I just kind of thought I was healing. I still had this gap in my soul that needed filling. And since my brain had no idea how to fill it with healthy stuff because it was still working on undysfunctioning, I decided it was time to go to the source and not some resource or a middleman, so to speak. It was time for me to return to God, and to God I went. So a few years later, I found myself getting more connected with God to the point that I've had visions and dreams that have kind of provided me with incredible clarity for my path. I talk to God all day as often as I can. I ask forgiveness when I slip up while not beating myself up for the stumbles. I reach to God to assist me with words I speak, actions I take, especially during moments of struggle and hurt. And during moments of success and happiness, I express gratitude to God and to anything or anyone involved. I give as much as I can afford, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially. I have strong boundaries to keep me centered in God. I have set proper expectations with myself and those around me so as to not introduce a feeling of disappointment if my expectations aren't met. I ask God to fill me up with love after I give of myself. That way I don't rebuild sort of unhealthy patterns or habits or get egotistical about the giving I do. I ask for God-filled words when I speak, including recording these podcasts. I try my best to be my best every moment of every day. I know I'm far from perfect, but that also allows me to see the path to God more clearly anyway. So now that we've heard where I think I am, where do I want to be? I suppose if I were to have heard all of that from someone else, I might think, dang, that sounds pretty good to me. What do they need to work on? Well, my ultimate goal is not to just reconnect with God. It's to be with God. It's to go home, to return to my divine self, that holy being, that child of God, in that bliss, to be once again returned to the consciousness of God, and no longer in my human form. I'm going to make it clearer. Right now, I excitedly await my human death so I can return to my eternal life with God, and not just talk about it. For me, it's the only thing I desire. I'll spend my days here in this human form being the best me I can be, and sharing it with all those willing to have me within their circle. I'll spread the love and light as often as I can, all while keeping my center with God, to the best of my human ability. I'll be patient with the time I have, and not to be too eager to transform, but I prefer to make the choice when it's time, if I can. But as I saw by getting hit by the car, I may not have much of a choice when it all comes down to it. Therefore, I've accepted it, and there's little I can do if something is out of my control anyway. So, God is where it's at for me. There is no other direction. And like Dorothy said, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. Thank you folks for spending more time with me and listening to my podcast. Sometimes it gets a little strange and I might go a little deeper than most folks are expecting, but that's what I'm looking for. This is part of my awakening. This is why I'm doing this specific podcast, to open myself up. I think I'm learning more from doing these podcasts than most people are listening to it, but that's okay. That's all part of the progress. That's my step. Thank you very much. God bless you all. And I look forward to sharing another podcast with you soon. Bye-bye.